Direct instruction. This chapter examines a variety of direct instructional approaches. Many of them lend themselves to deductive strategies. We will differentiate between inductive and deductive strategies. We will discuss direct instructional approaches that are teacher-directed in a whole class format. We will look at deductive strategies and how they can be used effectively to promote student learning outcomes. After learning of this module, you are expected to discuss the effective ways of using direct instructions as strategies. Differentiate punctuated lecture from interactive lecture. Formulate appropriate questions to be asked during lecture and/or discussion. Direct instruction as a strategy. According to research, direct instruction is one of the most effective teaching strategies. Although often misunderstood, students who are taught using direct instruction method perform better in reading, math, and spelling than those who weren't. What is direct instruction? Direct instruction is a teacher-directed teaching method. This means that the teacher stands in front of a classroom and presents the information. The teacher gives explicit, guided instruction to the students. So, isn't that how everything has always been taught in a classroom? Not entirely. Nowadays, experimenting in education is hot, as teachers find that not all students benefit from listening to a teacher talk all day. Not all lessons are best taught through direct instruction. Teachers now match the type of instruction to the task. Using direct instruction is effective when it suits the skills students have to learn. The direct instruction method is based on two core principles. First, all students can learn when taught correctly regardless of history and background. Second, all teachers can be successful given effectively materials and presentation techniques. The six functions or steps of direct instruction. Introduction or review. First, you set the stage for learning. This is the opening of the lesson and it's intended to engage students, get their attention, and activate their prior knowledge. Build upon a previous lesson or get an understanding of their background, knowledge of the subject you are about to teach them. To show your student what exactly they have to learn and what is expected from them, you can give them lesson objectives. Present the new material. Use clear and guided instruction so students can begin absorbing the new material. The lesson content should be carefully organized step by step with the step building on each other. In the direct instruction method, you can present new material through a lecture or through a demonstration. Lecture method. There are few essential steps for a lecture to be successful. State the main points of the lecture. Introduce a main organizing idea or theme. Use example to illustrate idea. Use repetition to reinforce the main points. Summarize and refer back to the main organizing idea. Demonstration. Here the teacher demonstrates the skills or principle in small steps. Visual demonstration will engage more students than a pure auditory lecture. This method is often used in science classes. Guided practice. Here the teacher and the student practice the concept together. The student attempts the skill with the assistance of the teacher and other students. The guided practice is conducted by the teacher. The purpose of this step is to guide initial practice, correct mistakes, reteach if necessary, and provide a sufficient practice so that the student can work independently. It's very important to ask questions to verify your student's understanding. Feedback and correctives. If the student don't understand the lesson material, the teacher has to correct them and give feedback. This is also very important in the guided practice as the students have to learn everything in that phase. There are four types of student responses to questions and actions a teacher should take depending on the answer. Student answer and teacher action. Correct, quick, and firm. Ask a new question to keep up the pace of the lesson. Correct but hesitant. Provide encouragement. And correct but careless. Simply correct and move on. And correct and lacking knowledge. Provide hints, ask a simpler question, or reteach. Independent practice. After guided practice and receiving the right feedback, students are ready to apply the new learning material on their own. Independent practice gives the students the reputation they need to integrate the new information or skills with previous knowledge or skills. Independent practice also helps students to become automatic in their use of the skills. During this phase, students usually go through two stages: unitization and automaticity. During unitization, the students are putting the skills they've learned together and use them in new situations. As they keep on practicing, students reach the automatic stage where they are successful and rapid and no longer have to think through each step. Evaluation or review. Check whether your students know everything before moving on to the new concept that builds upon what they've learned. Collect the student data you can review and decide whether or not the lesson needs to be retaught. There are much evaluation and reviewing methods, so make sure to pick the right one to find out data that really means something. Make sure your evaluation says something about your student's learning process. Formative assessments are better suited for this. Advantages of direct instruction. Direct teaching is best for learning specific concepts or skills. The specificity of the objectives or learning targets also make it easier for teacher to create assessment tests of high validity and high reliability. Students, for their part, do not suffer much confusion in determining which part of the lesson is important and which part is not. However, to take advantage of these benefits, the teacher must ensure that the contents of instruction are logically organized. The teacher must also ensure the students already possess the requisite knowledge. Disadvantages of direct instruction. The structure of direct teaching can be rigid enough to hinder the creativity of the teacher. There is very little room to improvise because this method follows a step-by-step procedure. The procedure usually starts with the introduction, followed by the rationale for the instruction, then the instruction itself. The procedure ends with a summary and followed by assessments. Direct teaching is utilized by improper teachers can be destroyed. For direct teaching or instruction to be effective, the teacher must have a mastery of the subject matter, must prepared well organized content, and must excellent communication skills. Without these traits, a teacher could not effectively carry out direct teaching or direct instruction, nor could develop a higher order thinking skill in the student. Punctuated lecture versus interactive lecture. What is punctuated lecture? A punctuated lecture, traditional lecture, is a metacognitive strategy that helps students become aware of the behaviors they exhibit during a lecture. These behaviors are unconsciously expressed and may impact a student learning in the classroom. In becoming self aware during class, a student can begin to take control of their behaviors and be more accountable for their learning. The teacher and the students engage in 5 steps: listen, stop, reflect, write, and feedback. Listen. Student listen to a lecture. Stop. After a designated time period, the teacher stop the lecture. Reflect. Students are given time to reflect on their action and thought during the lecture. They are prompted to think about what they were doing and analyze whether those behaviors helped or hindered their understanding of the topic. Write. Students write down their insights. The information is proceed and students determine how they can use the information to modify or change existing behavior. Feedback. Students give feedback to the teacher about what they have learned about themselves. Benefits of punctuated lecture: improved listening skills, increased attentiveness during lectures, awareness of classroom behaviors, increased responsibility for learning. What about interactive lecture? An interactive lecture is an easy way for instructor to intellectually engage and involve students as active participants in a lecture-based class of any size. Interactive lecture are classes in which the instructor breaks the lecture at least once per class to have students participate in an activity that lets them work directly in the material. The instructor might begin the interactive segment with an engagement trigger that captures and maintains student attention. Then the instructor incorporates an activity that allows a student to apply what they have learned or given them a context for upcoming lecture material. As the instructor feels more comfortable using interactive techniques, he or she might begin to call upon a blend of various interactive techniques all in one class. Why use interactive lecture? Lecturing is a time-honored teaching technique that is an efficient method to present large amounts of content in classes of any size, and it is efficient for sharing information with large number of students, but may result in students who listen passively. Making lectures interactive by including techniques such as think, pair, share, demonstration, and role playing can foster active engagement and enhance the value of the lecture segments. Using techniques that allow of the student to participate instead of having individual students answer questions when called on, will promote student retention and learning of the material presented during lecture, give student practice in developing critical thinking skills, enable instructor to assess how well the class is learning that day. Breaking up the lecture with these techniques not only provide format change to engage students, this activity allow students to immediately apply content and provide feedback to the instructor and student. How to give instructive lecture. Giving an interactive lecture involves creating and delivering an effective segment lecture in the engagement triggers and well-selected interactive lecture techniques. The instructor must begin by giving attention to pre-instructional planning and various classroom management and logistical issues that allow for modification from the traditional lecture format. Learning goals must be established for interactive lecture techniques. The instructor must determine what type of tasks will be involved and what sort of engagement trigger might be appropriate for the activity. Next, an interactive lecture technique must be selected and adapted for the specific course and content, and attention must begin to how student feedback will be collected. In most interactive of lectures, the instructor traditional attribution would be short and interactive activities could be both planned and spontaneous. An effective interactive lecture is likely to call upon a blend of various interactive techniques all in one class period. Additional advice is useful for instruction techniques to large enrollment courses. Asking appropriate questions. As a future educator, here are some relevant questions for you. When planning, do you have a clear idea about your learning intention? Is there an alternative to learning by doing? Do you consider it is important to students to know what the criteria for learning success are and to be held accountable for their learning? It is important to draw students into the lesson by appealing to their interest, curiosity, and wondering. Are modeling and demonstrating skills and concept part of your reporter? Does checking for your understanding have a place in your lesson? Should a lesson include guided instruction such that learners can practice new skills and concepts with feedback from the teacher? How important it is to close a lesson with a summary or organize student thinking and considered learning? Should the students have time to try on new learning independently in novel situations? Summary. Direct instruction is a teacher-directed teaching method. Means that the teacher stand in front of the classroom and present information. The teacher give explicit guide instruction to a student. In general usage, the term direct instruction refers to instructional approaches that are structured, consequence, and led by teacher and or the presentation of academic content to student by teacher such in lecture or demonstration. In words, teaching are directing and the instructional process or instruction is being directed as students. The functions of direct instruction. Advantage of direct instructions. Disadvantage of direct instruction. The teacher and the students engage in 5 steps. Punctuated lecture. Interactive lecture. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.